Hi, and welcome to the world of PHspeed. My name is Rosie, and in this series of videos, I will introduce PHspeed version 2.0. PHspeed is a low-code platform. You can create applications without a single line of code, as I have shown you in many samples. However, in many cases, you need to apply some behavior that is not standard out of the box. Then you need to write some code. The UN Disability Convention deals with the rights of people with disabilities. In this video, you will learn how you can create an interactive Google map, as in this example where we created a community site for the disabled people. Like in many samples, we start by creating a simple project. In this case, I use the defaults. Then I pick the required components and build a simple form that will display the map. It is essential to assign a device class to the column to allow the Google Map to be reacting responsively. As the map also requires a longitude and latitude to define the center, I set it to 00 for now. Because I want to check if the map appears in good order, I remove the database connection. Before I forget, you need to specify an API key to use Google Maps. In the IDE, you can predefine the keys you need. Also, for other APIs if you have them. Another option is to set the keys in the properties directly, or specify them by code. I want to add pins referencing an organization with its contact data in this map. Although the data is in Dutch, I think that you will understand the meaning. All organizations have a longitude and latitude coordinate that declares the pin. PHspeed contains a function to translate an address based on a postal code or address into a coordinate. I will explain that later. In the next steps, I will set a new center to adjust the map to Europe, and then set a correct zoom factor to show the Netherlands. It is all a matter of setting properties. But after that, we need to extract the data from the database and translate the info into pins on the map that you can select and request for additional data. To do this, you need to write a small piece of PHP code. It is now time to add the code for the pins. I need a database connector and bind it to the required database. In this example, I will use the simple query component. It allows me to access the database without needing a data source because I will do it all by code. I must bind the simple query to the database connector though. The logical place to apply the code is the onBeforeEnder event of the Google Maps component. This simple piece of code will select all companies with the required pool ID. Then it will retrieve all records one by one and add them to the Google Maps component. If you have seen other videos, then you will know that the $$ references form variables. Because the code references the simple query component as Q, I rename the component. Then it is time to run the application. As you can see, there are no pins yet on the map. In the PHP code that I showed you, I have specified my own pin image. But I forgot to add that to my project. So I will do that now. There are different ways of adding images to the project. Usually, you will use an image property of a component. But since we are referencing an image that is not bound to a component, I use the image manager. I locate the right image and drag and drop it into my project. Because PHsPeed does not copy all images every time it generates code, you must do that manually. That avoids the system having to copy all the images repeatedly. The map now shows all the pins that are stored in the database. The next step will be the ability to click on a pin, and then be able to retrieve some additional info. I use a modal pop-up in this sample that contains the additional information. But first, I must be able to make a pin selectable. That is quite easy, I only have to apply a label. So, in short, if you want to make a pop-up form that appears when you click on a pin, you need to apply a label to the pin. Clicking on the pin will show a tiny pop-up that gives access to the modal form. This modal form is bound to the Google Maps component. But this pop-up needs to contain data that comes from the database. So I need another piece of PHP code to achieve that. I need to save the value of the pin that the user has clicked on. I use a session variable here. Because PHsPeed is event-driven, you cannot use a regular variable, as they will only exist locally to the function. Of course, you can define your own global variable, but in this case, the session variable is the most convenient way. I now add the code to retrieve the additional data. Again, I make use of the same simple query component. The stored value in the session variable is used as the key to retrieve the required data from the database. Then the data is formatted into the format that I need to display it on the form and assign it to the label that I added to the modal form. Then everything is set and ready to go. In part 2 of this video, I will show you how you can retrieve the longitude and latitude coordinates by address to store it into a database, for instance. But for now, I thank you for watching.